What up, everybody? It's your boy Young Fizz, aka Mr. Dope Status on Instagram, and welcome back to another tutorial. Today we are back inside of the machine, and today I want to do something a little bit different. It's going to be on the mixing side. So this is going to be minimalistic mixing inside a machine. So if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and please do not forget to turn on the bell notifications so whenever I drop a new video, you'll be the first one to be notified. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the tutorial today, and that's called minimalistic mixing inside of Machine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and break down this track while showing you guys my process in mixing. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the melody. So I'm just going to go ahead and mute all the other tracks here. Before I even do that, let me just go ahead and play you guys the verse and then just kind of show you guys what the track sounds like raw. Let me go ahead and play some of the hooks so you guys understand what I'm doing with the hook here. Alright, so now you guys have a feel for the raw track. So by the end of this video, it's going to be sounding completely different, and it's going to be sonically good different is what I'm saying. So let's go ahead and show you guys my process here. And we're going to start with the melody. All right, so let me go ahead and mute these here. And let me go ahead and hit Option and spacebar, and that's going to play my beat here. All right, so let me go ahead and click right here. All right, and so let's start with chord number 1 here. So chord number 1, I'm using the audio engine inside a machine. And I'm just selecting right here. So 1 to 2. And then I'm using my sampler on the rest of the 3. I'm not sure why I did this for this beat, but it was something with the chops. It was something I had to keep something in time. So I decided to use the audio engine for it. And then when I made my other 2 chops, I decided to use the sample. So that's why I pretty much did that, the 3 chops there. So I'm using the audio engine, and that's indicated right there. And then I'm using the sampler for the other 2 chops here. So let's go ahead and play it in its entirety. All right, and then it just kind of loops itself there. So, and notice on the audio engine, I'm using something called the gate mode here. So when the gate mode is engaged, basically what that does is where it's highlighted here, that means you're going to be able to hear it. So think of it as a door opening and closing, or a gate opening and closing. So when this is orange or whatever color that you have selected and it's highlighted, that means you're going to be able to hear your audio. If it's not selected, which is indicated in the gray here, that means you're not going to be able to hear it. So notice where I have my orange here and then the gray here, but then right underneath it, that's where the audio is playing for my other 2 chops. So let's go ahead and show you guys that chop again. All right, so that's there. And then. All right, so that's why I pretty much did it like that. All right, so the next thing I want to go ahead and get into is what I did with the group here. So on this one, I wanted to really beef up the sound and really make it loud and just kind of, you know, make sure the volume is nice and good. So I started off with a compressor. And I'm really just taming the sound with the compressor. So again, let me go ahead and play with it on and off here. So this is going to be off. On. So right there, right away, it's already adding something to the track. It's just kind of taming the levels, but just at the same time, just making sure it just sounds good. I don't know what it is, but this stock compressor, I keep telling you guys, I can't get enough of it. It just sounds that good. All right, so the next thing I included was this plugin called Byte. And I believe this is a Native Instruments plugin here. And what that's really doing with this track here, I really want to make it vintage. This is a disco inspired track. So I wanted to make it sound like gritty and just kind of analogy, and you know, so I added something called a byte, and it's a plugin just to kind of degrade the quality of the original sample. As you guys heard, the original sample was like to me it sounded degraded, but I just wanted to degrade it even more to make it sound more vintage. So I just went ahead and added the byte. All right, so the next plugin that I added to achieve that effect as well is called this RC20 Retro Color. So as you can see, it's called Vinyl 1 is the preset that I'm using here. So let me go ahead and show you guys what this sounds like with this engaged. All right, so let's go ahead and turn it off again. And let me turn it on. And let me show you guys off and on here. Watch here. So to me with this plugin, what I'm really doing is getting a little bit wider. I introduced some noise, some wobble, and it's sounding more distorted, and it's just kind of adding something to the sample. And that's exactly, you know, what I wanted to do. All right, so the next thing I went ahead and did was added a limiter here, and I can always click here as well. And again, that's just for volume purposes, really trying to tame that volume there. And then I added this plugin by Waves called One Knob, and that's just to kind of give it that pumping effect here. So basically with the one knob is just giving that pumping and breathing effect, and that's what the one knob just does. So I mean it's kind of like side chaining, but it's just like a lazy way of side chaining. So that's what this plugin is doing. And I got it set, you know, pretty high, a little bit over half. So I really want the effect to be heard and everything like that. So let's go ahead and turn it on and turn it off. And then also notice how I have it set. I have the rate, let's see, I think it's a quarter note here. Let me go back. I think it was a quarter note I have it set at, because it's 4 on the floor. So I'm gonna go ahead and play that again here. And then I also have the offset at 20 degrees. And so basically that's kind of like shifting the phase in the plugin. So that's what that is for there. All right, so that's pretty much all I did with the group A, which is called the melody here. And we're gonna go ahead and move on to the drums. I'm gonna try to spend a little bit more time on the drums. Even though this is minimalistic mixing, you're gonna see why I call it minimalistic mixing, because I'm not really doing too much. If it doesn't really need anything, I'm not gonna add anything to the track. So let's go ahead and go to the drum group here. And let me go ahead and turn on my loop, and we're just gonna go focus in on this section right here. So, all right, so let me go ahead and just play this here with the drums only. So just straightforward, just a four on the floor disco track. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the sound design here / the mixing portion of the drums here. And this is where, you know, I feel like the lifting, not the heavy lifting, but the pre-lifting and the pre-baking comes in handy here. So right here, right away, I have these claps here. I'm gonna go ahead and play that for you. I think that comes in the hooks. I'm gonna go ahead and move to the hooks so you guys can hear what this sounds like. So I'm using this plugin called NLS Channel. So let's go ahead and play that again. And all that is really doing is just really thickening things up here. And it's like a saturating plugin, and it kind of emulates the consoles here. So that's what I'm pretty much using that for. And it's just, like I said, I'm really driving those claps because I want it to sound vintage. I want it to sound warm. And that's what this plugin is doing. It's just adding that extra warmth and saturation to the track. So let's go ahead and bypass it and have it on at the same time here. All right, so that's pretty much what that does. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to the second sound in the slot, and that's going to be the snare here. And I'm going to go ahead and solo it so you guys can hear it by itself. And with this snare, it's basically just raw. It's dirty. It's like a disco snare. And then I just added this high pass filter, which basically lets the highs through. But basically I just wanted to cut some lows. So I'm cutting about 60 hertz, and that's just going to clean up that low end just so I don't get any extra rumble when I'm adding my bass guitar in and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and add this in. So just kind of cleaning it up just a little bit. All right. The next thing I went ahead and did was add a kick here. So let's go ahead and listen to the kick raw. And as you can see, not doing anything to the kick. No EQ, no compression, no nothing. All right. But the next thing I did here, I added another little punch kick. So let's go ahead and solo that up. And again, no plugins, no nothing on the track here. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the snare. And then here I just added a compressor here, just to kind of make it slap just a little bit more. All right, so it's really just kind of slapping and snapping here. And that's all that pretty much is doing there. Let's go ahead and go to the sharp hi-hat. Now, as you can hear with this sample here, it's very it's very sharp, and it sounds, to me, it doesn't sound that good. So what I had to do was add a filter, and I just pretty much did a high pass. I'm just cutting the lows out of here. And then I felt like it was too bright, so I wanted to go ahead and cut some of the highs out here. So I added a low pass. And what that does is going to make it basically sit further back in the mix. And if you've watched some of my previous mixing videos, you know that for whatever reason, for me, I don't really use an EQ to achieve this. I like to do like two filters here. I usually use a high pass filter, and then I'll turn around to use a low pass filter. You can use an EQ as well, but for some reason, this is always my go-to setup. So definitely watch those other mixing videos to see what I'm talking about there. All right, and then the last thing I did, just to bring up the level, once it sounded good, I added this compressor here. And that's just a level thing there. All right, so let's go ahead and hear it again, what it sounds like raw with no plugins on the hi-hat here. And let's go ahead and add in the plugins. So already sounding a lot better there. All right, so the next sound I went ahead and did was the cowbell. And that is pretty much just raw like it is. No effect. Doesn't really need effect. Another cowbell. No effect. Just some panning. That's about it. And that's another secret to mixing a lot of people may overlook is the panning. Anytime you want a wider sound, just, add like percussion and stuff and pan them to the left, pan them to the right. The harder you pan it, the bigger the stereo field gets. So, but I wanted to kind of emulate a drummer and kind of make it sound like, a real disco track. I don't want to do nothing too out of the ordinary. So like I said, I just wanted to kind of just give it some space, give it some stereo width here. So I just added a little cowbell, little percussion just to kind of give it some space. And then that's pretty much the drum section there. So let's go ahead and play the drums by themselves again. And then for this here, I went ahead and added something on the group here. So just a compressor just to kind of get everything meshing together. So it's just kind of just gluing the track just a little bit inside here. Turn that off. So it's just adding a little bit of punch, kind of gluing everything together, and just sonically, it just sounds good to me. But when I was working on the track, I noticed how it just sounded so dry. And to compensate for that, I went ahead and added a plugin called Valhalla. Now, you don't have to use the Valhalla. You can use a regular reverb. But for some reason, it just worked for me. So this is what it sounds like with a vintage Verb Valhalla. So right away, it's just adding a lot of space. So let's go ahead and pop this in and out. And like I said, you don't have to use the Valhalla. You can come in here and add a regular reverb and adjust it to your liking here. So let me go ahead and add, let's say a regular room reverb is fine. And let's go ahead and see if we can kind of match it. So like I said, a regular reverb works is fine. But like I said, I just decided to use the Valhalla. So we're going to go ahead and stick with that for now. All right. And then also when it comes to the clap section, I added something called wider claps. And I just basically have this routed into, I have this channel, which is sound number 1, routed over to the wide and then the stereo. And I'm just using a pair of replicas. All right, so this is like a little, kind of like a delay type of plugin. I'm just using 2 different presets and just adjusted a little bit of the sound there. All right, so let's go ahead and go back. All right, so let's go ahead and see what that sounds like. And this is played in the hook here. All right, so that is pretty much played in the hook. And so that's what it sounds like, nice and wide there. All right, so the next thing moving on is the bass here. All right. All right, so I didn't do anything for the group, but for the sounds here, let's go ahead and go with this one here. This is just a regular bass. And then let me go ahead and just play it by itself. All right. Sounds like I have a wrong note there, I just realized. But that's 2 basses playing in conjunction with each other. All right, so that's sounding really good. I didn't really do nothing to the basses here, so I just kind of play them like they were. I mean, I could have EQ'd them, but I felt like they sounded good as is. But later, I'm gonna show you what I did to kind of beef up the basses here with the master mix. All right. All right, so the next thing here is the little vocals here. It's just a little something here. And again, I'm using the audio sample here, and I'm using the gate mode here, and I'm just kind of playing the sample. So I'm doing some chops. All right, so let's go ahead and play that by itself. Just a little vocal sequence there. And let me see what I'm doing here. Nothing there, nothing there. And I'm using a reverb on this vocal here, and I think it's the head. So let me go ahead and turn this on. So to me, it already has some reverb on there, but I just added just a touch more. So let's go ahead and play that again. So that sounds better than this right here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and keep that on there. All right, so that's the vocal section. Very simple for the group. I didn't do nothing, just kind of left it alone. And then all this stuff, I also want to point it out, is routed through my 5059. So maybe you guys are watching this video and wondering, why is the 5059 here? Why is there audio passing? Why didn't he, mute this? Because this is where my sound is coming in at here. So I have it routed through my 5059, which is made by Rupert Neve Designs. It's a satellite mixer, basically a summing bus, and it's all coming through right here. All right, so this is being routed here, and this is going back to the group. And then the way I have it routed, so I'm going to try to explain this the best way I can here. So basically, this is where the input of the Neve is coming right here. So this input here is connected. So my Neve is connected to my Orion Studio interface, right? And that's basically getting this here, and it's going through this channel here, so I can add whatever I want on this channel, or I can add it to the master, and that's being routed to the master. So the group here is being routed to the master over here. And so basically, after it comes from my Rupert Neve, I can add some more effects inside of the machine to get, like, basically to beef up my samples, my music. And so that's what I'm kind of doing here. That's the kind of routing that I'm using here. So let's go ahead and talk more about the master here. So like I said again, so for the Rupert Neve is coming through this channel here, and it's being routed through all this stuff to get to the master here. All right, and so this way I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how I beef up my track here. So let's go ahead and play what it sounds like, everything engaged. So it sounds good, and that's exactly what we want. We want it to sound good. But what I realized is that the volume is really, really low. And that is intentional, because that's the whole goal in mixing. You want the mix to sound good. That's what you want. That's what you're aiming for. You want it to sound good. And then when the mix sounds really good, you can add whatever else you want to really turn everything back up. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the master section here. All right, so the first thing I did was use a compressor to really bring up that level here. So this is going to be a little bit loud, so you may want to crank down your speakers just a little bit here. All right, so let's go ahead and show you guys the compressor. So I'm really crushing it with the compressor, and that's exactly what I'm aiming for with this type of track in disco. Like I said, I wanted to sound vintage. I wanted to sound compressed. I wanted to sound just like a vibe. I wanted to really get that vibe out. So I just added a compressor just to bring up the volume and really get the dynamics really crushed and really glued together. And that's what the compressor is doing for this track here. The next thing is the EQ. And that's beefing up the track. So I'm adding 4 dB at 84. I'm adding, another 2 dB at 110. And that's where like the bass kind of frequency lives, is like when you're playing like a bass guitar, the nice kind of sound, depending on what kind of guitar you have or whatever the case may be, you want to kind of boost, around the 110 area or the 100 area around the bass, depending on, what it sounds like. So I felt like I needed that boost. So this is with it off again, and this is with it on. So let me go ahead and A-B it for you guys. All right, so that's sounding really good. Got the volume up, got the bass really beaten now. The next thing I wanted to go ahead and do was add something called a saturation. So this is basically just kind of saturating the sound, and this is a saturator right here, and that's all this is really doing, something really basic. And then notice the preset that I'm using. It's on the classic preset right here. So when you hear that, if you listen closely, just really listen to the low end and what it's really doing with the drums. Listen very carefully here. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off. I want you to listen very closely here. So I don't know if you guys heard that, but if you're listening really closely to the low end and what it's doing to the drums, it's really bringing out that low end, and that's exactly what I'm going for. It's just really to get that tackle that low end is what I want for this type of track here. So the next thing I went ahead and did was add another EQ, and this is doing something a little bit different here. This is a solid EQ. And again, I'm just doing something just a little bit different here. So I'm adding about 3 dB, and we're at 155. So we're kind of going over to the mid range just a little bit, but I'm using the low here right here. So like the low frequencies right here. This is what I'm using right here. So 3 dB at the 155 hertz here. So. So what that's really doing is just adding that extra little punch that I was kind of lacking, because when I added the saturation, it kind of introduced some like distortion, just a hint of distortion, not too much, just a little bit. But with this EQ, what I wanted to do was kind of bring out some of that low end and regain some of that punch back just a little bit, because I felt like I lost that with the saturator here. So, and that was that EQ there. So the next thing I did was add another EQ, because I don't want this EQ doing all the work. I want to kind of spread it out evenly. So I used another EQ, and then also I forgot to mention, this is because the way it sounds, like this just has like for some reason it just sounds really good, and I have it on the E setting, so it's more for character. And then, like I said, I added another EQ. So let's go ahead and play it with it off first, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add it in while you're listening. Sounding really good. Sounding so good. So check it out. This EQ right here, y'all. Check this out. I'm adding some more low end. Why is he using so many EQs? Why is he using so many compressors, saturators, all this stuff? For the low end. You want to tame this low end. So I'm adding 4 dB at 52.2 hertz. So again, this is a little bit lower. See, back here I was adding some more punch, and then over here I'm adding 84, which is kind of like more like a boomy sound. But right here, we're really adding that low 50 hertz hip hop type of, drum punch here. So this is the low end there. And then also peep, I don't know if you guys heard it, but check this out. Peep the high mids here. So I'm adding just 1.6 dB at 904, right? Just a little bit. And then I'm adding 4.4 dB at about 6,000 hertz. And that's just really crystallizing my sound, just adding that little sparkle. Let's go ahead and listen to that again. I don't know if you can hear that, but just really listen to what it's doing with the hi-hats and just kind of bringing that. It's just really bringing that out. So listen real quick again. So just really bringing that out, and I'm loving the way this sounds. It's probably a little bit too much on the high end. We can probably bring that down, maybe just a couple, right around there. Okay, so let's call it 4 dB. All right, and like I said, that's just adding just a little bit of high end, just a touch of high end. I'm gonna go ahead and save this as I'm working, because I want to go ahead and save that change there. And then next, I'm gonna go ahead and scroll over here. Okay, so I added the EQ. All right, so after the EQ comes another saturator. All right, so let's go ahead and see what this saturator is doing here. All right, so notice I'm having the tape emulation here. So this is input 6 dB, the contour all the way up, and then the drive at another dB, just adding a little bit of just some warmth to the track with this saturation here. So let's go ahead and play what that sounds like. The drums. Listen to those drums when I just add this plug in here. Just a little bit more hint of distortion. All right, so last but not least, I went ahead and added a limiter here. And that's just to basically give it its max loudness and really kind of tame everything that's going on. So it just kind of glues everything together. So let's go ahead and listen to what that sounds like all the way on here. And that is pretty much the whole track in its entirety. So like I said, we've covered a lot in this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, any comments, please don't hesitate. Leave them down below. I will definitely get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning in with me. Make sure you check out my other links down in the description below. Make sure you go ahead and follow me on Instagram as well as hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on bell notifications. It's your boy Young Fizz. Thank you for rocking with me once more and again. We will see you on the next tutorial. We out.